Welcome back to the Vanessa G Fitcast. I'm Vanessa Pozos, and here with me is my husband and co-host, Omar Pozos. Omar?
Yeah.
What is a high and a low for you lately?
A high and a low.
I'm changing up my intro question.
Yeah, no, I like it because I you were going to be like, how are you? And I was like, I don't know. But high and a low. So high this week is our team is coming into town. Like literally they're all flying in today. We have this massive beach house. And I get to live my fantasy of owning a beach house for a couple of days. So that's a high. And then a low is, I think with all of that comes a lot of extra work and or preparation. So today I feel like I've been running all over the place, had to go to the post office and then, just a bunch of errands on top of, trying to do our day-to-day stuff. So we are taking it one step at a time. But how about yourself? I like this question, the highs and the lows.
Yeah, well, I like what you'd shared with me this morning of really focusing on being present. I think that was you guys, the last few days, I've been struggling a little bit. I've been on the struggle bus. I've shared on social media, I'm on a protocol right now. It's pretty tough, and it would be a lot easier if I was just like doing normal things at home all the time. But in the midst of this protocol, we've traveled to Nashville for a few days. We've gone to a conference here locally. We went to my brother's engagement party, and now we have a team retreat that we're hosting. So it's just like constantly being out and about around opportunities to make it challenging to stay on this protocol. And I definitely have been feeling the struggle and the challenge. So I share that as I would say that would be like a low, and I share that also for any clients. If you're in a tougher protocol right now that feels challenging, and that could be anything, because what might feel tough for me might feel easy for someone else. What might feel tough for someone else might feel easy for me. But if you feel challenged, I hear you. I'm with you, and growth comes through challenge. But I guess I would say, my high obviously is the retreat, but I will just also expand upon what you had shared with me this morning about. It may be better if you told it of like the Ultramarathon guy.
Yeah. So I've been listening to this podcast. I think it's called The Motivate with the number 8 at the end. It's a podcast on Spotify that I found that will take snippets and clips of different motivational videos, a lot of like just motivational speakers, athletes. There was a Tiger Woods one not too long ago, but anyways, the one that we were listening to this morning, it was an ultramarathoner, ex-Navy SEAL guy. So like tough of the tough, like, this is just truly a badass dude. And he talked about 3 different things that have helped him become so successful, not just in his ultramarathon career, but also in his time as a Navy SEAL. But he talked about being patient, number 1. He talked about how, his races are 100 miles, and he said the first 90 miles, you just have to be patient. It's the 10 last miles that are what makes you grow. And he talks about that terminology of just being patient, staying true to the process. Number 2, staying present. He talked about a story where he was running, it's a last man standing kind of race where like literally you win when the last person quits. And he talked about, it's crazy. He talked about how the guy that was running against him was this like very decorated runner. And at the end of the day, he's like, where I felt like I had an edge was when he started focusing on the remaining 6 hours of the race versus what was in the current time. So he's like, so you take it one step at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 lap at a time, 1 step at a time. And then the last part, he talked about being deliberate and just, basically going and sharing what it is that you want in your life and going after it, essentially. So that really hit home for me, especially with us being so busy this morning. So I hope, obviously, it helps you, and I hope it helps anybody else that's listening.
Totally. Just be in the present. Be in the present in every way that you can, because that's where I would argue a lot of, I would say most of us, when it comes to like anxiety, it comes from this anticipation of future things. And it's a lot of just like creating stories about the future, anticipating the future, worrying about the future. But if you just focus on the present, then you don't have those worries and fears and anxieties.
Yeah, man, that was a great question. I think we may have found our new intro. I love that. That was awesome.
No, I got to keep switching up on you. Otherwise you're going to come like, I have this perfectly well-prepared high and low, as opposed to like the natural in the moment high and low.
All right, fair.
Let's dive on in though. So I actually, when I was preparing for, what do I want to talk about in the podcast this week? You know what I did, you guys? I actually went back and I looked at some of our really early podcast outlines. Because and we're 238 episodes into this thing. We've been doing this for almost 5 years, I think now. And with that, there has definitely been times, and I might be off on my mouth on that.
I'll do the math. You explain.
But there have definitely been times where things just flow really easily. Like, I know exactly what I want to talk about in the podcast. And then there are times where I'm like, man, I don't know what to talk about. We've talked about so many great things in the past. Like, I always want things to be new and fresh. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, there were so many great things we said in those early episodes that it'd be great to even sometimes revisit some of those topics and put a fresh spin on it. And so that's what I decided I wanted to do today. I was like, let me look back at some of our previous outlines. And I actually opened the outline of an early episode thinking, oh, I bet you there's going to be some stuff in here that I disagree with now. And I actually was really surprised. I was like, you know what? No, I still stand behind everything I said here, despite the fact that we're constantly growing, we're constantly learning, and it's, normal. And I hope I continue to challenge previous beliefs of mine and let that be a sign that I am growing and learning. But this is one of those areas where I'm like, no, this stuff I think stands the test of time.
Yeah. And it's been 4.5 years, by the way.
Okay, so I was close.
Close enough.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about some small habits that really make a difference for you when it comes to staying lean. So, this is mainly for those women who, these are not going to be the difference makers when it comes to necessarily getting lean. These will help you get lean, but as we've talked about in my own journey, there's often a lot of deeper things we have to solve in order to get lean. But I think the thing that people don't talk about enough, that's why I want to talk about today, is once you get lean, once you get to that place where you're like, all right, this is how I want to just maintain now from here. A lot of people don't take the time to learn how to maintain, and that's where you see a lot of people end up back in the same place over and over and over again because they see reaching their body goals as this finish line destination where it's like you cross the finish line of a race and you're like, woo, I did it. Now let me go celebrate and just do the things that I've didn't do all during training for this race, right? You look at the physique competitor who diets really extremely, does their physique show, and then that same day they're going and binging on donuts, right? That's the realities of people will do these extremes and then they get to the other side and they're like, all right, now I can go back to what I was doing before. But in order to actually maintain a lean, healthy body long term, there are certain habits we have to maintain. And so these are the things that I think are the smallest, simplest ones that anybody could take on. And regardless of where you are in your journey, if you're in that process of trying to get lean, these will help you. Do work on these 100%, absolutely. But these are going to also be the biggest difference makers, in my opinion, for staying lean once you get to that place.
Can I add something really quick? Because I think, people all the time are curious and will ask okay, so this person did this and, how do you maintain it? How do you build that habit? Kind of like brushing your teeth, right? How do you do something to where you can get up every single morning and just do it because, that's just what you do. And I think all of these different things that you're going to share are going to highlight this, but I think they can be very simple, but also very sustainable. If you're having to do, I don't know, carnivore, for example, if all you have to do is eat, animal-based, meats and stuff like that, and that's all you're doing to maintain, I'm like, well, then eventually it's not going to work.
Really suck to do long term.
And so what I'm saying is, and what I want people to pay attention to is, all of these things are something that are very achievable and doable, regardless of what phase of life you're in.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's dive in. I have 8 items on this list of these small habits that make a big difference for staying lean. So the first one on the list is choose highly satiating foods and minimize calorie-dense foods, especially during times when we're hungrier. For example, maybe during certain times of the month, definitely lean towards these foods. So what do I mean by that? When we're talking about highly satiating foods and versus calorie-dense foods, think of this could be the same food in a different form, or these could be entirely different foods. So think of the difference between having grapes versus having grape juice versus having raisins. These might all be different variations of a grape, but they're going to come with different levels of satiety and different levels of calorie. You take a single grape and you eat that, it's probably, 5 calories. I don't know for sure, but it's a very low calorie in this little grape. Yet you have that grape shrunken down into a raisin, and now it's going to become more calories for what is the space it's going to take up in your stomach, right? So if I'm eating a cup of grapes, I'm going to feel a lot more full for a lower amount of calories than if I'm eating a cup of raisins. A cup of raisins is a lot of raisins. Same things when it comes to, grape juice. I could consume probably a cup of grape juice, but it's going to take a lot of grapes to squeeze out into that grape juice. There's so many endless examples we can give, but it doesn't have to necessarily even be the same food in different forms. This could just look like, what are the foods that are like my staple foods in my rotation, in my diet? I want to make sure I'm really filling my plate with very filling, satisfying foods. And for me, that's a lot of fruits and vegetables and lean proteins.
Yeah. The one thing that always gets me, babe, is like, when we're like working all day or in between calls, and I'm like, okay, I'm a little hungry. Well, I always go to the cabinet door. I'm like, let me grab a protein bar.
He's always like, what snacks has Vanessa bought recently?
Yeah, I'm like, what Aloha bar am I gonna get? So it's that over, like, I'm like, if I just sat down and had a good protein source, maybe, I don't know, some veggies or something more filling, I mean, that would be such a big difference maker.
When we first were dating, you guys, and we were kind of like later into our dating to where I was basically living with Omar at his place whilst paying
living with Omar at his place.
Whilst paying for my own apartment as a single person that I really basically wasn't living in. That was a very poor financial decision. This apartment literally became just a snack bar for Omar, where I would still just keep the drawers of snacks filled. I would like have all these different like fun little package things, because I'm the type of person where I like to always have options on hand so that when eventually I need a snack, I can go and grab one. But like when I would come into the apartment, I'd be like, mysteriously, all the snacks have disappeared here.
Yeah, I like snacks. I don't know what to tell you. Buy more snacks.
But these are, difference between like, okay, if we're talking about grabbing a snack, obviously nothing wrong with having, a protein bar, an Aloha bar, things like that in moderation. But if you're finding yourself getting hungry, we need to make sure we're reaching for foods that are very filling. So maybe it might feel, more satisfying for you to have a hard-boiled egg and a cup of watermelon, or, some deli turkey and some, cashews and carrots. Yeah, like there could be so many things that are just much more filling. And so that's where people who stay lean year round typically fill a lot of the food that they're eating, like a lot of their diet. And when I say diet, I don't mean dieting to lose weight. I mean like just what they're eating as a whole, you'll find is generally filled with a lot of these very filling foods. And then the calorie-dense foods, they allow themselves to have them. They have them in moderation. That's part of life. They're not, forbidden foods, but they don't have them in excess. They're not eating 6 donuts. They're, having that one donut. Maybe they're sharing a donut with their significant other. It's truly having things a little bit more in moderation in that way. Second one on this list is resistance train. And this is really what I want to say is like the something over nothing mentality when it comes to resistance training. Because I'm not talking about those, people stay lean because they're following the perfect plan. They're consistent with it day in and day out. They never miss a workout. No, I'm saying the people who stay lean are those who just commit endlessly to continuously doing some form of resistance training continuously, consistently over time.
Yeah. Do you want to share what we did on Saturday after the engagement party?
Yeah, I mean, we had a long day on Saturday, and this was after a long work week, and both of us had been really busy. We hadn't gotten as much strength training in as we would have liked during the week, and so we both were like, all right, we have to get a good workout in on Saturday. But we went to a conference the first half of the day, then we went straight to my brother's engagement party. The engagement party went longer than we expected to, so at this point, we're like, oh my gosh, the gym's already closed. It's 6:30 that we were heading home, so getting home at like 6:45. Gym closes at 7. I'm, of course, like, my circadian rhythm's kicking in where I'm like, I'm hungry. I'm ready to eat dinner. But I was like, I have to cook dinner anyway. Like I don't have the food ready to eat anyway. So I'm like, well, I guess while it's cooking, could just grab the dumbbells we have and do a couple exercises. And Omar gave me a little bit of that extra encouragement as well, because he was more like, no, I really need to do something. I'm like, well, if you're going to do something, I can do something. Yeah. And so we just took our dumbbells outside, literally like right outside the kitchen window, so I could still kind of like between sets, I'm popping in and like stirring up my shrimp in the pan and then popping back out for my next set. And that's the reality. And I hope this helps, especially those who have kids, who have busy jobs, all the things. You don't have to have the perfect workout. You don't need to go to the gym and have all the fancy equipment. You don't need to do all the perfect things. If you can just consistently, regularly grab dumbbells or bands, or even just use body weight and just do some resistance exercises, some strength training exercises regularly, you will 100% make a big difference, because that is the biggest difference maker for having a strong metabolism, is building muscle. And we can only build muscle if we are putting strain on that muscle through resistance. Number 3 on the list, kind of following the same train of thought as far as activity, but this is a little bit of a different take on it. People who stay lean, you will find they always make physical activity a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. They're not just like, oh, my only activity is getting a workout in. You'll find that they find ways to have fun being active. They find hobbies that are active. They find ways to socialize that are active. This is a key piece that I find is a difference maker between those who stay lean versus those who don't. It's just how you move your body in ways that just works into your life. Like I know, Omar, you've gotten into doing like Spartan races and stuff with my family.
I only do it because I want to impress Ted, your dad. But yes, yeah, and it's little stuff like that. But I mean, how many times have we been like, oh my gosh, like we're gonna sit down. I'm like, do you want to go for a quick walk? And it's just,
walking is my favorite
right around
activity.
The
like seriously, I'll tell Omar, I'm like, if I'm so busy that I can't like fit in at least one point during the week going for a nice long walk through the park, like it affects my mental health. I crave it. I love going for walks. And if you don't feel that way, maybe try it in different ways. Try going for walks in fun places. Like you and I sometimes on the weekend we'll go and, walk along the water, go out, to the pier where we live and do a nice long walk. Like,
I mean, if you have kids, you have a dog, or you're like, okay, let's get them worn out a little bit. Walks are great. Like you get the kids, get the dog, and next thing you know, they're passed out.
Yeah, if your only form of walking is on a walking pad or a treadmill, it's probably not very fun. Get out and move your body. And then just find other hobbies. I know pickleball is super popular. We haven't really ever gotten into that. I ride horses. Like that's a physical activity for me. Just find something, like think even of like your inner child. What are the things that you enjoyed doing as a child? I saw when we were in Nashville, next to our hotel, there was a ballet studio that did like ballet, like classes for adults, but it was also like, presented as like a workout type of class thing too. And I was thinking, I'm like,
Isn't that like Pure Barre? Isn't that what that is?
Yeah, I think that's different though.
Oh, okay.
This was like a true like ballet, I think. So I think it would be more for like I was going to say, I didn't like ballet growing up. My mom put me in ballet classes and I went and cried in the corner. But I know some women do and did. And that might be something where it's like, oh, that could be a fun way to just get back in touch with physical activity in a way that feels kind of like indulging that inner child, right? Number 4 on my list, don't drink our calories. I will specify with this, other than like the occasional fun coffee, or also I'm a fan of drinking coconut water as I work out, as like an intra-workout carbohydrate beverage. But as a whole, you'll find people who stay lean, they don't drink their calories, because kind of comes back to that first point of we want to make sure that we're choosing satiating foods. And a beverage that is calorie-free versus a beverage that has calories, you actually won't really feel a difference in satiety. You might feel a difference in terms of something like, for example, the reason I use coconut water in a workout is because that is actually providing a fast form of carbohydrates to fill my muscles so that I can hopefully exert more power in my strength training. So there's a difference there between me having a 0-calorie beverage versus a carbohydrate beverage like coconut water, but I don't feel full from drinking coconut water. I'd feel no more full than I would if I drank water. It feels the same in your stomach. And that's where, if you are drinking a lot of calories, and maybe you're even drinking coconut water because you're like, oh, coconut water is healthy. Vanessa said she drinks coconut water when she works out. I'm going to start drinking a bunch of coconut water. You're also going to start consuming hundreds of more calories per day. And that could kick you into a calorie surplus, which could lead to you starting to gain weight over time.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you just want the biggest bang for your buck, right? If you have a certain amount of nutrients that you're trying to get in, I'm like, okay, what is going to give you the biggest volume to stay satiated, to stay full, to prevent cravings?
Yep.
That's kind of what you're looking for.
That said, if you're someone who tends to undereat, like especially I know a lot of women who are really busy during the week tend to undereat, adding in a little bit of calorie beverages during those times where you are prone to undereating might make sense. But long term, you don't want to build that as a habit to just do all the time, because you might find yourself on weekends now over consuming calories, but continuing that same habit of drinking calories, and that's not going to serve you. Number 5, prioritize sleep. We talk about this often. Sleep is so important on all aspects. And, one of the biggest things we talk about is how sleep impacts your hormone health. And so if you want to stay lean, and if you've listened to more than one episode on this podcast, you probably know by now that if you want to stay lean, you got to keep your hormones balanced. And sleep is a huge driver of that.
Haven't people said that like sleep is one of the most underrated like recovery tools that people don't use?
Absolutely. Yeah, your body recovers at night. So you could be working out, but if you're cutting out your sleep in order to work out, you might not be recovering from your workouts, and then you might actually just dig yourself into a hole there. Number 6, practice consistency and patience. I feel like this really comes back to even what we had talked about at the beginning of this episode as far as patience with the process, patience with things. But in general, like this is probably the theme across all of these points is consistency, and having consistency in your habits, in your routines. That's where, we ultimately, for a lot of our clients, I'd say for most of our clients, we like to utilize macro tracking as a tool for monitoring nutrition. Macro tracking in and of itself isn't a magic tool, but when used appropriately, I do think it's one of the best tools for managing nutrition. However, I always like to tell my clients, I don't want you tracking your macros in the nursing home. I don't want you to rely on tracking macros for the rest of your life in order to know how much you're eating. We want to build the skills in order to stay consistent long term. And so that's where we always graduate our clients into, our final phase of our process, the flourish phase, where we actually teach intuitive eating principles, and we really walk through how to make sure we can maintain our habits with nutrition. Number 7, don't obsess over the scale or occasional feelings of heaviness. This is a big one. If you want to maintain leanness, you can't obsess over staying lean. The reality is, if you obsess over that, then when you have the day-to-day fluctuations, when you have the time of the month fluctuations, which are all normal and natural, you're gonna feel heavier at times, your clothes are gonna feel tighter at times, you're gonna look more watery or puffier at times, you're going to weigh a little bit more on the scale at times. These things are part of actually staying lean. It's just allowing those ups and downs to just not affect you. And so that's a big part of this, is do not obsess over those things, or you will make bad decisions. You'll start to jump into calorie deficits when you don't need to. You'll continue to stress your body out. You'll do things that are misguided.
Yeah, the way I like to look at it is, and I've seen this so many times, but stocks, for example, right? There's the ups and the downs, and if you zoom in, there's so many things that are volatile. There's so many peaks, so many valleys. But if you zoom out, over time, that graph is constantly going up, 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 up. And so it's the same concept here, where it's like, hey, don't focus so much, don't obsess so much over like the number on the scale today. Let's look at it on a monthly basis or weekly basis 100%. Or every 6 months, every 12 months. That's, I think, also, and it also gives you a lot of peace of mind, where it's not like, hey, I had a big, carb heavy meal, so this morning I'm retaining more water, and like, you don't worry about that stuff. Yep. When you look at it over a more longer time perspective.
Absolutely. Number 8, our last one on this list. And this is actually one that I added.
Oh my God, this is a big one for me.
From some of the original ones, because I was thinking about like, what else would I add to this? This one, free does not mean you need to eat it. We choose our food intentionally. So this is something that I really took on as a rule back in college, because during college, this was a big time where like you're often broke at times, and you could find yourself very easily just looking for the free food, the free things. And oftentimes the things that are free are like the cheap pizza, or, I went to the University of Georgia, which is very much Chick-fil-A culture. So it was like constant Chick-fil-A sandwiches. And I found, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm eating all these Chick-fil-A sandwiches. This is not helping my freshman 15. This is not helping my struggles with my weight that I was really struggling with at the time. And so that's where I made a rule with myself that I'm going to only eat things if I actually want the thing, if I'm like intentionally choosing to have the thing, not just because it's free and offered to me. And this is something I bring into adulthood. Like, I know we were at that conference on Saturday, and there were, was breakfast provided, there was lunches provided, and yet I, already had my plan for the day of what I was going to be eating. Like I mentioned, I'm on a specific protocol anyway, so the foods they were offering wasn't going to align with the protocol. But if I were to in that moment be like, oh, well, it's free, I should eat it, that doesn't make sense, because we're not considering what is the cost to my health, my choices, my goals, my belief in myself. There is a cost there. Just because it doesn't cost you money doesn't mean that it's actually free in the sense of how it makes you feel free versus being controlled by these external things of making choices that are not really you choosing that.
Yeah. Can I offer a different perspective on something like that? So you mentioned intentionality, especially if it's free, and I don't know, maybe I'll get some backlash for this, but if it's free, like for example, the engagement party, there were desserts there that looked so good. I took a bite out of it. I'm like, actually, it's not that good. So guess what? It was free. I just didn't eat the rest of it. So I had a bite and I was like, okay, never mind. This isn't for me. But it's being intentional with what it is that you are putting into your body.
Yeah, 100%. Intentionality, in my opinion, I would define this as, when it comes to your food choices, making sure that you have thought it through, of you're not just like impulse decision, you're being intentional with okay, I'm deciding I want to have this, knowing, you know, what may come on the other side of maybe this was not aligned with my current goals, or maybe this isn't going to make me feel my best, or maybe, you know, this means I'm going to probably choose different foods later in order to balance this out. So it doesn't mean you can't ever have the free thing that's offered to you. It just means being intentional to make sure that you are choosing to have that, and you're not being like, oh, well, I have to have it because it's free. That is not true. Well, I hope that these habits are helpful for you. I would encourage you to choose one or two that you're like, ooh, that's something I need to work on. What are the things that maybe as we were walking through them, you're like, that's something I struggle with. I want you to focus in on that and zero in on that. How can you really work on just making a small difference in that area? Because that will pay off for you in the long run, regardless of where you are in your journey right now. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back next week with another great episode.
Bye, everybody.